Chapter 1. The door that was never meant to open. The door had been waiting longer than anyone remembered how to count. It stood at the end of a passage that should not have existed, an extra corridor behind a chapel sacristy, where stone ribs bowed under centuries of damp prayer. Candles refused to burn there. Breath came shallow, as if the air itself were rationed. And at the far end, beneath a lintel carved with symbols worn smooth by regret, the door waited, ajar by the width of a finger. No record spoke of it directly. It appeared only in margins, a monk's cramped warning, a pilgrim's half-erased confession, a surveyor's map with one wall drawn twice, as though uncertain where truth ended. The elders said the door was not locked because it did not need to be. It was not sealed because seals invite hands. It was left open as a kindness or a challenge or a punishment. Some doors are not barriers. They are questions. The wood was old, older than the abbey that tried to wall it away. Blackened oak, veined like a corpse's wrist, scarred with nail marks that did not belong to carpenters. The iron hinges sagged, thick with rust-colored dry blood. When the door moved, it did not creak. It groaned, low and wet, like a throat remembering how to beg. Those who stood before felt the change first in their lungs. The air grew thin, but not empty. It pressed back, reluctant, as if inhalation required permission. Visitors described the sensation differently. Wool stuck behind the ribs, water filling the chest, hands closing around the throat from the inside. The bravest laughed it off. The devout crossed themselves. The foolish stepped forward. Just a door. One voice would whisper, never quite convincing itself. Another voice, older, quieter, always answered back. Not a door, a mouth. Brother Allard had written that last part before tearing the page from the ledger and burning it. The scorched mark still haunted the margins of the book, curling inward as though ashamed of what they once held. On the night the door opened wider, the abbey bells rang without being pulled. They tolled once, slow, hesitant, then again louder, and then they fell silent, as if listening for a response from below. Monks woke choking on incense that had not been lit. Dogs in the village howled until their throats bled. And in the passage, the door shifted, widening from a finger's breadth to the span of a hand. That was invitation enough. 3 entered that night, though the records only admit to 1. The first was Matthew, a pilgrim whose faith had grown sharp with desperation. He had walked for weeks with blistered feet and a mouth full of unanswered prayers. When he reached the door, he fell to his knees, tears cutting clean lines through the dust on his cheeks. "If there is penance left," he whispered, "I will take it." The door breathed in. The second was Sister Agnes, who followed out of fear rather than belief. She had heard the bells. She had seen Matthew disappear into a crack of darkness, like a candle snuffed between fingers. She told herself she wanted to save him. "God walks before me," she said aloud, her voice trembling like a poorly tuned string. The door did not argue. The third did not have a name in any surviving text, only a smear of ink, dragged hard enough to tear the parchment. Perhaps the hand that wrote it shook too violently. Perhaps it was pulled away midward. Inside there was no room. That was the first lie the door told, suggesting space where none existed. Beyond the threshold was not a chamber or a hall, but a narrowing descent, walls pressing inward with every step. The stone was warm, pulsing faintly, as if remembering a heartbeat. The darkness was complete, yet thick with movement, like something massive shifting just out of sight. Matthew tried to pray. The words tangled in his throat. "Can you feel that?" he whispered, though he did not know to whom. Sister Agnes reached for him and recoiled. His sleeve was damp, not with water, but with breath, hot, rhythmic, alive. The air changed its mind again. It grew heavy, then fickle, allowing one breath and denying the next. Each inhale tasted of iron and old smoke. Each exhale returned thinner, as though something had taken a portion for itself. Panic set in, not sudden, but creeping, methodical, like frost by the soul. The walls began to speak, not in words at first, in sounds remembered by bone. The crack of breaking teeth, the wet slap of skin against stone, the long animal moan of something realizing too late that it had been tricked. The hinges behind them answered, shrieking as the door swung wider still. "Don't listen," Sister Agnes hissed. "They are echoes." Only echoes. But echoes do not beg. Please, a voice breathed, close enough to fog her ear. Please don't leave me again. Matthew screamed then, a raw, tearing sound that ended abruptly, cut short like thread between scissors. Something moved in the dark, something vast and patient. The passage narrowed further, stone folding inward, reshaping itself around the absence where he had been. Sister Agnes ran. She ran until her knees struck stone that was suddenly flat, until her hands scraped against carvings she could not see but felt too clearly. Faces locked in expressions of endless arrival, mouths open in prayers that had been interrupted mid-syllable. The floor sloped downward, slick beneath her palms. "God," she sobbed. "God, if you were here." The whisper came from everywhere at once. He stepped away. The darkness brightened, not with light, but with recognition. She understood then that the door was not an entrance, but a memory. Each visitor fed it something it lacked. Breath, faith, names. She felt hands on her shoulders, too many, layered, cold and warm at once. "Remember us," they murmured. That is all the door asks. Above, in the abbey, the bells rang once more, and then shattered, iron splitting like brittle bone. At dawn, the monks found a passage collapsed, sealed by stone as if it had never been. Only the door remained, standing impossibly free, ajar by the width of a finger. Fresh scratches marred the wood. The hinges were wet, and in the silence, if one pressed an ear close enough, the door still breathed, slow, satisfied, waiting for the next hand curious enough to push it open. Chapter 2, where the dead refuse to stay buried. The ground here remembers every footstep, and resents the living for making new ones. The cemetery lies in a shallow basin between hills that lean inward like conspirators. There are trees bent by a wind that never seems to leave. No birds nest there. No insects hum. Even daylight hesitates, thinning as it passes over a broken gate, whose iron bars sag like tired ribs. The sign that once named the place is rotted into illegibility, its letters eaten away until only grooves remain, spelling nothing but absence. Graves sink lower every year. Not collapse, descent. Slow, deliberate, as if the earth is digesting something it cannot finish. Headstones tilt inward, bowing in what might be reverence or exhaustion. Fresh soil never stays fresh. It darkens overnight, damp and warm to the touch, breathing faintly beneath the moon. Names fade faster than bodies. Letters flake away from marble and slate. First the dates, then the surnames, then the given names that once tethered the dead to memory. Eventually only shapes remain, scratches and grooves like claw marks left by someone trying to spell themselves back into being. Don't read the stones aloud, the locals warn, voices low and hurried. They might hear you. The village keeps its distance. Houses turn their backs to the cemetery, windows shuttered even in summer. Children are taught the paths that curve around it, never through. On certain nights, when the moon thins to a blade and the hills hold their breath, no one sleeps near the western edge of town. That is when the ground grows warm. Old Tomas, who kept goats until the night they refused to return from grazing, claimed the heat came first. Not fire heat, but body heat. As if hundreds of chests lay just beneath the soil, rising and falling together. "They're not dead," he whispered to anyone who would listen. "They're waiting." No one corrected him. Correction implies certainty, and certainty had no foothold here. Once a year, the priest came to bless the ground. Each year, he stayed a shorter time. His prayers grew clipped, his voice tight, as though he feared being overheard. The last priest left halfway through the rites, his holy water freezing solid in the bowl. "It doesn't want forgiveness," he said later, hand shaking. "It wants recognition." At night, the cemetery changes its posture. The air thickens, pressing down like damp cloth over the mouth. Fog crawls low and purposeful between the stones, coiling around markers and slipping into the shallow depressions where graves have sunk deepest. From a distance, the ground looks uneven, restless, like a sea paused mid-swell. That is when the walking begins. It starts quietly, a shifting sound barely audible, the sigh of soil parting, the soft, obscene sound of something pulling free inch by inch. Dogs whine and hide. Doors creak open a fraction, then close again as if ashamed of curiosity. Footsteps follow. Not shuffling, not dragging. Measured steps, testing weight, relearning balance. The dead do not rise all at once. They come singly or in pairs, emerging from the earth with care, brushing dirt from sleeves that no longer exist, straightening spines that remember how to stand. They do not look as they did in life. Faces are pale and smooth, features softened by time and pressure. Eyes reflect moonlight too well. Mouths open and close soundlessly at first, tasting air like something long denied. They walk the paths between the graves, careful not to disturb those still resting. Soon, one murmurs, voice like dry leaves dragged over stone. Not yet, answers another. The ground is still hungry. Those words were overheard once, by a boy who climbed a hill seeking a lost dog and found himself watching from behind a fallen marker. He returned white-faced, silent for days. When he finally spoke, he asked his mother why the dead sounded tired. "They're not angry," he said. "They're patient." The village elders sealed the cemetery after that. New locks, new chains, prayers hammered into the gate like nails. It did nothing. Gates are for the living. The dead already know the way out. On the far end of the grounds lies a section without markers. No stones, no names, just earth, dark and perpetually disturbed, as though something beneath turns in uneasy sleep. This is where the ground sinks fastest, where the warmth is strongest, where the fog gathers thick enough to hide shapes that do not wish to be counted. No one admits to burying anyone there. Yet on certain mornings, footprints lead away from that place. Bare feet, deep and well-formed, as if pressed by bodies heavier than memory should allow. A woman was found once at the edge of town, standing barefoot in the stream, staring at her reflection as if unsure of its loyalty. She wore a burial shroud yellow with age. When spoken to, she turned slowly and smiled with lips that remembered smiling, but not why. "I just needed to stretch my legs," she said gently. The box was so small. They tried to return her to the cemetery. The ground refused her. Each shovel of dirt slid away from her body, exposing her feet again and again. The soil cooled instantly where it touched her skin, recoiling as if burned. At last, the elders stopped digging. "She's done resting," Tomas said, crossing himself with trembling fingers. "Let her walk." Now she wanders the roads at night, humming tunes no one recognizes, feet leaving no prints. Others have joined her, figures glimpsed at crossroads, on hillsides, standing just beyond lantern light. They never approach. They never chase. They wait. The earth continues its slow consumption. Graves deepen. Names vanish. And beneath it all, something shifts, something vast, layered, and old. The cemetery is not a place of death, but a storage, a holding breath drawn too long. Tonight, the ground is warmer than ever. The fog thickens early, rolling over the gate and spilling into village streets. Beneath the soil, something presses upward, testing the weight of the world. A new grave collapses in on itself with a sound like a sigh of relief. From within the earth comes a whisper, carried through root and stone and bone. "We have rested enough." And somewhere, far below the sinking graves, something massive turns, preparing to stand. Chapter 3. The town that pretends it still lives. The town did not die. It learned how to hold its breath. Travelers first noticed the silence, not the empty streets. Silence thick enough to press against the ears, to hum faintly like a held note that never resolves. The road leading in is intact, recently repaired in places, as though someone still expects arrivals. Milestones stand upright. Fences lean, but do not fall. Even the welcome sign remains, its paint peeling into shapes that resemble letters only if you try very hard to believe. Beyond it, the town waits. Windows stare without blinking, rows of them, glass clouded but unbroken, reflecting the sky with a dull obedience. Curtains hang behind the panes, frozen midsway, their fabric rotted into lace by time and damp. Some are drawn back just enough to suggest a watcher who stepped away and never returned. Doors remain closed, but not locked. Clocks have forgotten time's mercy. Every building has one, on mantels, on walls, behind counters. Their hands rest at different hours, different days, different years. Some tick without moving. Others move without ticking. None agree. The church clock is the worst of them all. Its bell rope still taut, its face cracked, its hands spinning slowly backward, whenever no one looks directly at it. Footsteps echo where no one answers. A single step sounds like many here, rebounding off narrow streets and stone facades. The town amplifies presence, as if starved for it. Sound lingers too long. Your breath, your heartbeat, the soft scrape of your shoe against grit. When you stop moving, the echoes do not stop with you. They wander on, testing doors, climbing stairs, circling back as if unsure where to return. People fled this place once. That much is certain. The records, what little survived, speak of a winter that never ended, of shortages, of fear that arrived before any clear reason. Families packed belongings and left keys on tables. Shopkeepers swept floors one last time. The schoolhouse was abandoned mid-lesson. Chalk still pressed against slate in a child's careful hand. But the record stopped abruptly. No mention of disaster. No fire. No plague. No war. Just absence, like a sentence cut short by a hand closing around the furrowed page. Something stayed behind when everyone else fled. The air smells faintly of smoke and soap, of meals interrupted. Kitchens are set as if for dinner, plates stacked, bread hardened into stone on cutting boards. Beds are made, sheets tucked tight, as though sleep might still arrive if invited politely enough. In one house, a radio hums softly. No station, just static and the occasional murmur of a voice too low to understand. If you listen long enough, patterns begin to form, rhythms almost like breathing. Did you hear that? A traveler whispers, though there's no one to hear him. The town answers with a door creaking open 3 streets away. There are signs of movement, but never of life. Chairs pulled closer to windows. Fingerprints in dust where someone leaned, recently enough that they have not yet softened at the edges. Footprints appear in ash and dirt overnight, leading nowhere, stopping abruptly in the middle of streets. The well still works. Lower a bucket, and water comes up clear and cold. Drink it, and it tastes faintly of iron and memory. Locals, those from nearby villages, say you should never drink twice. The first sip reminds you of home. The second makes you forget how to leave. They tell other stories too, in voices kept low and hurried. They walk the streets at dusk. An old woman says, eyes fixed on the horizon. Not ghosts. Worse. What stayed behind? Someone asks. She shakes her head. Not what? Who? At sunset, the town changes expression. Shadows lengthen unnaturally, stretching ahead of their owners, bending around corners before bodies follow. Light drains from colors, leaving everything the shade of old photographs. Windows darken one by one, not as night falls, but as if something inside is closing its eyes. That is when the pretending begins. Lamps flicker on in empty rooms, not all at once, slowly, deliberately, as though following routine remembered rather than needed. Curtains shift, floors creak under invisible weight. Somewhere, a piano plays a single note, over and over, striking the same wrong key with patient insistence. Voices drift through the streets. Low conversation. Laughter, thin and careful. A woman calling a name that is answered from too far away. The words are ordinary, domestic, harmless. That is what makes them unbearable. Come inside, a voice murmurs near your ear. Warm, familiar, almost kind. No, another whispers back, panicked. Not yet. It's not time. If you hide, the town does not search for you. It waits. If you run, the streets lengthen, looping subtly, guiding you past the same storefronts again and again. The butcher's shop with hooks that sway gently despite no wind. The bakery with its blackened ovens, still warm to the touch. The schoolhouse, where desks are arranged too neatly, all facing the door. Someone has been counting them. Chalk numbers cover the board, written and erased repeatedly until the slate is scarred. The final number is incomplete, cut off mid-stroke. On the second floor of the town hall, a ledger lies open. Names fill its pages, written in careful script. Some are crossed out, some are circled, Some appear multiple times, added in different inks, different hands. At the bottom of the last page is a space left blank, waiting. When footsteps climb the stairs below, slow and measured, the ink on the page shivers. They're still practicing. A voice says from the hallway, amused and tired all at once. Practicing what? Comes the reply. Being us. The footsteps stop outside the door. The handle turns. Not fully, just enough to test resistance. The town holds its breath again, listening for a decision. Outside, the church bell rings once. Not a call to prayer, a signal. Windows brighten all at once. Doors unlock themselves. The murmuring grows louder, closer, filling the streets with the sound of lives being rehearsed. Shadows detach from walls, standing upright, smoothing themselves into familiar shapes. The town straightens its spine. Tonight, it will try again to be alive. And if it succeeds, if someone answers when it speaks, there may be no one left to remember that it ever died at all. Chapter 4. The Forest That Learned Your Name. The forest did not watch you enter. It listened. The path leading in is narrow and apologetic, worn thin by travelers who never intended to stay. Sunlight reaches only the first few steps, then thins, then fractures, as branches weave themselves into a ceiling too deliberate to be chance. Leaves hang motionless, suspended as if waiting for a cue. The air smells green and old, layered with rot and rain and something faintly sweet, like breath held too long. At the tree-lean, sound changes its rules. Your footfalls soften, swallowed by moss that yields like flesh. Birds fall silent, not in alarm, but in attention. Somewhere deeper with creaks, not with a sway of wind, but with a careful adjustment of bodies leaning closer to hear. Trees bend as you walk, not all at once, not obviously, a degree at a time, subtle enough to doubt yourself. Trunks curve inward, bark tightening, grain twisting into shapes that resemble knuckles locked in prayer or warning. Branches dip low, brushing hair, shoulders memory. Roots surface where they should not be, knotting together across the path like fingers interlaced, forcing you to step carefully, reverently. This place feels wrong, someone whispers. The forest breathes in. Voices follow without bodies. At first they sound like echoes. Your own words return with delay, softened and reshaped. Then they grow distinct. A murmur behind your left shoulder, a sigh just ahead. The sound of your name spoken gently, lovingly, with the precise cadence of someone who has practiced saying it. Come this way, the forest says, borrowing a voice you trust. No, you answer, too quickly, too loud. The leaves shiver at that. The elders from the villages bordering the forest teach their children a rule older than maps. Never answer when it calls you by name. Nicknames are safe. Titles are safe. Even insults are forgiven. But your true name, the one spoken softly at birth, the one that fits behind your teeth like a secret, that is an invitation. The forest learned those names once. Long ago, they say it happened during a famine, when people fled into the woods, seeking shelter, seeking mercy. The trees listened as mothers begged, as lovers promised forever, as the lost cried out to be found. The forest remembered every syllable. It learned how names bend when spoken in fear, how they soften when spoken in love, how they break. Deeper in, the light turns green and dim, as though filtered through water. Time loosens its grip. Minutes stretch thin, then snap back without warning. You pass the same twisted oak twice, 3 times, though you never turn around. Moss creeps up boots and hems, leaving damp fingerprints that do not fade. Are you tired? A voice asks kindly. It sounds like your father, or your sister, or the one who used to hold your hand before the ground took them. I can help. The voice says, you can rest. The forest does not rush. It has learned patience from roots. Whispered dialogue drifts between the trees, never quite overlapping, never loud enough to locate. Did you hear them come back last night? Yes. They screamed when they remembered. Do you think this one will stay? Everyone stays. There are places where the trees grow too close together, their trunks pressed tight as ribs. Passing through feels like slipping between clenched teeth. Bark scrapes skin, leaving pale marks that tingle and itch. Sap clings like blood, warm and slow, refusing to let go. In clearings, if they can be called that, stand offerings. Bundles of twigs tied with hair. Old shoes filled with berries. Names carved into stones and placed at the base of trees whose bark has grown over them, swallowing letters whole. Some names are crossed out, some scratched so deeply the stone beneath has split. The ground is soft here, uneven. It yields underfoot, springy and damp, as though layered over something hollow. When you press your palm to it, you feel a faint vibration, not movement, but murmur. Thousands of voices speaking at once, too low to distinguish, too intimate to ignore. They're praying, someone whispers. No, answers another voice, amused. They're remembering. At the heart of the forest stands a tree older than the idea of age. Its trunk is massive, spiraled, scarred with carvings that predate any alphabet still spoken. Faces bulge faintly beneath the bark, suggestions rather than features, as if the wood is remembering what flesh felt like. The roots spread wide and deep, weaving into the earth in patterns too precise to be natural. This is where names are kept. If you listen, really listen, you can hear them, not spoken aloud, but exhaled. Names carried on breath that stirs the leaves without wind. Each one is distinct. Each one is said with care. Yours fits so well, the forest murmurs, close now. We've been practicing. Shadows gather the edges of the clearing, thickening, smoothing themselves into shapes that stand almost upright. They do not advance. They wait, heads tilted, listening as though to a performance nearing its favorite part. You feel it then, the pull, not physical, emotional, a tug behind the ribs, like homesickness for a place you have never been. The forest shows you things in flashes. A childhood path, a lover's smile, a room where you once felt safe. Each memory is warmer here, richer, heavier. You don't have to leave, the voices say together, a chorus stitched from many throats. You never really did. Your name is spoken again. This time it is perfect. The trees lean closer, branches knitting overhead until the sky disappears entirely. Roots tighten their grip on the soil, sealing the ground. The air thickens, sweet and damp, filling lungs with the scent of moss and old rain and belonging. Somewhere far away, a bird screams, a sharp, final sound, then cuts off abruptly. The forest exhales. If you step forward, the path behind you softens, blurring, forgetting itself. If you turn back, the trees shift subtly, presenting new routes that feel reassuringly familiar. Either way, the voices follow. They are patient. They are loving. They already know how this ends. As night settles fully beneath the canopy, fireflies flicker into being, dozens and hundreds, hovering at eye level, spelling nothing, illuminating everything. In their cold green light, the carvings on the great trees seem to move, mouths opening slightly, as if preparing to speak. And from deep within the roots, the forest whispers your name one final time, not as a question, but as a promise it has already begun to key. P. Chapter 5. The House That Watches You Back. The house noticed you the moment you noticed it. It stands at the end of a lane that once pretended to be a street, where hedges grew into walls and the sky narrowed to a slit. No sign marks it. No number claims it. The gravel leading up to the threshold has been turned and turned again, as though feet have paced there for years without ever committing to the knock. Even before you reach the porch, the windows dim, not with reflection, but with intention, like pupils tightening against light. Mirrors darken before you reach them. The front door opens without sound, not swung but eased, the way one might part curtains to see if the room beyond is ready. Inside, the air is still and faintly warm, scented with dust and soap and something older, paper kept too long against skin. The floorboards do not creak when you step. They listen when you pause. The house exhales and settles, a minute adjustment of beams and joists, a sigh that travels through the walls, as if the structure has finally found your weight acceptable. This place feels attentive, someone whispers, though there is no one to hear it but the house. The foyer is narrow, paneled and would darkened by hands. Coats hang on pegs without owners. Shoes wait beneath a bench, arranged neatly, toes aligned as if expecting instruction. A mirror hangs above a small table, oval, framed in tarnished silver. You do not see yourself in it at first. You see the room as it was years ago. Brighter, louder, crowded with furniture that no longer exists. A woman crosses a reflection, carrying a bowl. She hums. She does not look at you. When you step closer, the image changes. Now you are there, but not as you are. The reflection shows you older, shoulders bowed, eyes rimmed with sleepless shadow. Your mouth moves, forming words you have not yet spoken. Don't. Your reflection mouths. Not again. You turn away. The mirror's surface ripples, darkening, swallowing the future it briefly offered. Hallways lead deeper than the house should allow. Each turn seems to add rooms that were not present before, corridors branching like veins. Wallpaper peels in slow, patient curls, revealing layers beneath. Flowers, stripes, ink patterns that resemble handwriting. Names repeat there, faint and half erased, written over one another until they blur into a single plea. The walls remember where to stand. If you lean, they lean back. If you brush past, the plaster holds the warmth of your shoulder longer than it should. Doors close gently behind you, not trapping, merely encouraging forward motion. The house prefers progression. It dislikes retreat. A clock ticks somewhere overhead. Its rhythm is wrong. Too slow for seconds, too fast for minutes. Each beat seems to land not in time but in memory, striking moments you would rather leave untouched. Is anyone here? You call, hating how small your voice sounds. Yes, answers the house, using a voice it learned once and never forgot. It is the voice of someone who loved you badly, or loved you well and left. The words come from the kitchen, from the stairs, from the space just behind your ear. I've been here, it says gently. You just didn't look. The kitchen is immaculate. Counters gleam. Pots hang polished and unused. On the table sits a ledger, its cover worn soft by handling. Open it, and you find dates instead of recipes. Notations in careful script. He stood by the window too long. She cried in the sink. They argued about nothing for an hour and a half. Each entry ends with a small mark, a dot, a dash, a thumbprint smudged in ink. These aren't mine, you whisper. The page turns itself. The next entries are. The stairs climb steeply, narrowing as they rise. Photographs line the walls. Frames mismatched, glass cracked. They depict rooms you have passed through, angles you remember seeing only moments ago. As you climb, the images update. A photo shows you pausing on the landing, hand on the banister. Another shows your back as you ascend. None show your face. Halfway up, a door opens. A bedroom waits beyond it, arranged with careful familiarity. The bed is made the way you prefer. The window looks out on a view you recognize from dreams, a field that never existed, a tree that bore impossible fruit. On the dresser sits another mirror, larger this time, its surface black as still water. You approach despite yourself. The mirror shows a room emptied of you. The bed is stripped. The walls are bare. The door stands open, and beyond it the hallway stretches on, populated by shadows that move with your gait. In the reflection, the shadows turn their heads in unison. They're waiting for you to remember. The house whispers, pleased. What? You ask. How you lived here. You laugh then. A brittle sound that skitters across the ceiling and does not return. I've never been here. The house pauses. You feel, consider this, beams shifting, nails tightening in their holds. Everyone says that. It replies, before they remember. The floor beneath your feet warms. Not heat, body warmth. The sensation spreads, a gentle pressure rising through soles and bones. The walls draw closer, not enough to alarm, just enough to be felt. The house adjusts again, learning the shape of you more intimately now. From a mirror comes a soft knocking. Tap, tap. A hand presses against the glass from the other side. Then another. Faces emerge slowly, like photographs developing in dark fluid. Familiar faces, uncomfortable ones. Some are yours. Let us out, they murmur together. You promised. Downstairs, the front door closes. You run, then back the way you came, but the hallway has grown longer, the turn slightly altered. The mirror in the foyer reflects an empty house, dust motes floating lazily in sunbeams that no longer exist. The oval mirror above the table shows you standing there, unmoving, eyes glazed, mouth slack with understanding. You see now, the house says, almost tender, I don't haunt, I keep. The walls pulse once, twice, like a heart testing a new rhythm. Photographs shatter softly upstairs, glass tinkling like rain. The ledger slams shut in the kitchen. Somewhere, the clock stops ticking. The mirrors all darken at once. In the blackness of their surfaces, a final image forms. Not a house, but a lane outside, empty and overgrown, as if decades have passed in a breath. The windows seal. The walls settle. The house leans inward, satisfied. And as the lights go out room by room, the mirrors brighten just enough to show the moment you have not lived yet, the one where the house finally stops watching, because it has finished remembering you. Chapter 6. The road that ends too many times. The road does not begin where maps insist it does. It begins the moment you decide to leave. At first it looks ordinary enough. A narrow strip of cracked asphalt threading through low hills, bordered by grass gone pale with dust. Telephone poles march alongside it like a disciplined procession, wires humming softly with messages meant for elsewhere. The sky stretches wide and indifferent. You drive or walk or ride, believing distance will behave as it always has. Then the road corrects you. Maps lie about this place. Lines bend where they should not. Distances fold inward, and landmarks migrate like restless thoughts. A turn marked as final curves gently back into itself. A straight stretch reveals a bend that was never there before. You follow directions perfectly and arrive somewhere familiar, though you swear you have not been there yet. Travelers say the first sign is repetition. The same tree appears twice within an hour. An ash with a lightning scar down its trunk, bark peeled white like exposed bone. You note it, uneasy but unconcerned. When it appears again, closer now, branches angled just so, you feel the faint itch of doubt. The third time, you stop counting. This can't be right, someone murmurs, hands tightening on the wheel. The road hums in response, a low vibration felt through soles and bones. It is not displeased. It is attentive. A rusted sign stands at a fork ahead. The paint is flaking, the letters eroded until only fragments remain. OME/ETERN/AY. Whichever path you choose, the road accepts it. The other fades gently from view, like an option withdrawn rather than denied. Goodbyes rot quickly here. A traveler once carved names into the guardrail, hoping to mark progress. He returned days later to find the name smoothed away, replaced by shallow grooves shaped like fingernails. Another left offerings at the roadside. Coins, photographs, a letter sealed with wax. When she passed that way again, the offerings had been rearranged, spelled into a word she did not remember teaching the road to know. Stay. Shadows behave oddly along the verge. They lag behind their owners, stretching too long, bending at angles the sun does not support. Sometimes they detach altogether, lingering for a heartbeat after you move on. If you glance back too quickly, you might see one hesitate, as if considering whether to follow. Footsteps echo even when you drive. A rhythmic thud beneath the engine's purr, as though something keeps pace just out of sight. Do you hear that? A voice asks softly, from the passenger seat or from memory. No, comes the answer, too fast. Keep going. The road passes through a settlement that no longer appears on maps. Houses stand back on the asphalt, their porches sagging, paint peeled into long vertical scars. Mailboxes gape open, mouths bent on rusted hinges. A diner sits at the crossroads, its neon sign flickering weakly. Open. Inside, lights glow warm and steady. The smell of coffee drifts out. People sit at the counter. 3, maybe 4. Faces turned away. Cups steam. Cutlery clinks. The scene hums with life practiced well enough to pass at a distance. Maybe we should stop, someone suggests, just for directions. The road tightens its curve, easing you past the diner without resistance. The windows darken as you pass. The neon dies with sound like a hell breath released. Further on, the asphalt narrows. Cracks spiderweb outward, forming patterns too deliberate to be accidental. Names appear briefly in the fissures, scratched in tar, written in dust, spelled in oil stains. They fade when noticed, The same sign returns. This time the paint is fresher, the letters clearer. Welcome back. I've never been here. You say aloud. The road says nothing. It does not need to argue. At dusk, the light turns coppery and thick. Headlights cut tunnels through gathering gloom, illuminating the same stretch of pavement again and again. The same curve, the same mile marker bent at the same angle, the same dark smear on the shoulder that might be a shadow or something waiting patiently. Travelers where the road listens. It learns the cadence of your breathing, the rhythm of your thoughts. It knows when you are close to giving up, when exhaustion dulls fear into acceptance. That is when it offers comfort. A straightaway appears, smooth and promising. The hum beneath your feet softens. The sky opens just enough to show stars, distant and reassuring. For a moment, you believe you're free. Then you see the tree again. The lightning-scarred ash stands ahead, its white wound glowing faintly in the dark. At its base lies something new, a suitcase, battered and familiar. You recognize it before you realize why. That's mine, you whisper. The road curves gently, guiding you past without slowing. In the rear-view mirror, the suitcase opens by itself. Clothing spills out, then photographs, then things you do not remember owning, objects heavy with significance you cannot place. The mirror fogs. Voices rise from the darkness beyond the headlights, overlapping, murmuring. Almost there. Don't stop now. You said you'd never leave. The road dislikes goodbyes because goodbyes imply endings, and endings require agreement. This road was never agreed upon. It was accumulated, step by step, mile by mile, built from hesitation and second thoughts. Every traveler who turned back added length to it. Every farewell swallowed deep into its loops. There's a place, somewhere between miles, that the road tightens into a knot. Engines stall there. Feet blister. Compasses spin uselessly. Those who reach it feel the weight of all the journeys that fail to finish, pressing down like hands on shoulders. You can rest, the road whispers, borrowing a voice that once told you the same thing. You've gone far enough. Ahead, the asphalt ends abruptly at a barrier of darkness, thick and absolute. Behind, the road stretches on, identical in both directions. The signs point everywhere and nowhere. The shadows gather close now, circling, their movements synchronized. If you step out, the ground feels warm. The hum beneath your feet grows louder, resolving into a pulse. The road is not stone or tar. It is layered in tension, compacted longing. It curves inward, subtly, like a spine bending toward comfort. Somewhere far off, an engine starts, or stops. It is hard to tell which. The last thing you see before the lights fail is the mile marker beside you, its number scratched out and replaced by a single word, carved deep and loving into the metal. Again, and as the darkness closes in, the road stretches itself just a little longer, ready to carry you, until you forget what you were trying to leave behind. Chapter 7. Beneath the water, something waits. The lake looks harmless until it learns you are looking back. It lies in a bowl of stone and reed, fed by streams that arrive quietly and never leave the same way. At dawn, the surface is glass smooth, holding the sky with devotional care. Clouds rest there as if pinned. Mountains lean down to examine their reflections and find them deeper than expected. The water gives nothing away. Not ripples, not scent, not sound beyond a soft, continuous hush-like breath held just short of speech. Locals say the lake is patient. They avoid naming it. Names sink here. They dissolve, pulled downward syllable by syllable, until all that remains is a sound of water touching itself. Fishermen cast lines only at the edges and never after dusk. Children are warned not to throw stones. Don't wake it, the elders murmur, tapping knuckles against wood as if knocking might appease whatever listens beneath. The surface accepts everything gently. Leaves drift and settle. Light skates and shatters into slow coins. Even screams, when they happen, are taken with courtesy, flattened, spread thin, erased before they can offend the air. Only the patient notice the way the lake listens back, the faint tightening at the margins when something warm approaches. Divers feel it first in their chests. Pressure is expected, taut, measured, but this is different. This pressure arrives sideways, coiling around ribs, squeezing breath into something small and precious. The water thickens as you descend, not heavier, but aware. It presses close, intimate, as though adjusting to the shape of your fear. Stay near the rope. A voice says through the mask, thin and distorted, if it pulls. The sentence ends in bubbles. Below the first 10 meters, sound behaves strangely. It does not travel so much as hover, lingering in pockets, replaying itself with small variations. A fin kick echoes twice. A breath answers itself. The lake remembers noises and tries them on again, seeing how they fit. Light fades away, hope does, gradually. Then all at once, shapes drift where light should die. They are not fish. They are not shadows, though they move like both. Long silhouettes slide just beyond the beam, bending when the light touches them, withdrawing without hurry. They have no edges you can trust. They appear thinner from one angle, impossibly wide from another, as if perspective itself is something they chew and soften. Did you see that? Someone whispers, forgetting the radio, forgetting the rules. The water tightens. It begins as a gentle constriction around wrists and ankles, like a reassuring hand. Then it creeps inward, compressing joints, pressing the suit closer to skin. Gauges flicker. The needle trembles, uncertain which truth to tell. The lake adjusts its grip, testing how much you will tolerate. Above, the surface remains calm. Boats drift without wake. Oars dip and rise, leaving no scars. The sky watches itself unbroken. If anyone calls out, the sound schemes across and vanishes. Nothing ripples in reply. Below, the lake opens. Not a cavern, not a trench, an absence shaped like intention. The floor drops away into a darker dark, one that eats the beam of the lamp and gives nothing back. Old anchors lie scattered at the lip, chains trailing down like shed skins. Nets tangle there too, woven into knots no human hand would bother making. This is where the offerings go. Coins polished smooth by time. Wedding rings. Knives with handles worn by habit. A bell once lowered on a rope, meant to mark depth. Its clapper gone, its mouth sealed with silt, as if silence were hammered into it. The lake collects without preference. It keeps what it is given and learns from the weight. They're down there, a diver murmurs, voice trembling into static. I can feel them. Them is what the elders say as well, though no one agrees on number. Sometimes it is singular, a vastness folded into itself. Sometimes it is many, layered and patient, drifting together like a thought too large to be held in one mind. There are stories, of course. A village once stood where the lake rests now, its houses clustered around a chapel whose bell rang too often. The ground softened, wells deepened. One winter, the thaw never ended. Water rose inch by inch, polite and unstoppable. People left keys on hooks. They carried children and bread and names. The lake followed. They say the bell still rings down there, muted and slow, counting time the way water does, by pressure, not by hours. The first touch is almost kind. A brush along the calf, a glide past the shoulder. Something passes close enough to stir the silt without disturbing it. You turn, lamp sweeping, heart battering ribs like a warning. The beam catches nothing. Then, just at the edge, a suggestion of curvature of mass. Don't chase it, the voice crackles. If you chase. The lake answers by pulling, not a yank, a suggestion. The rope grows slack, then taut, then slack again. Your body tilts. The absence below seems to widen, inviting gravity to remember itself. The water presses closer now, everywhere at once, filling spaces you did not know existed. You hear your name. It does not come through the radio. It arrives inside the mask, warm and intimate, spoken with the care of someone who has practiced. The syllables float, each one wrapped in bubbles that burst against your teeth. We've been waiting, the lake says, borrowing a voice you trusted once. Come see. Your light flickers. In the brief stutter illumination, you see them clearly for the first time. Forms arranged with purpose, drifting in slow, synchronized arcs. They have surfaces like skin stretched too thin over depth, marked with pale lines that could be scars or script. Eyes open and close along those surfaces, not aligned, not fixed, tasting light, Measuring it. 1 turns. The water tightens further, compressing your chest until breath becomes a narrow thread. Panic flares bright and short-lived. The lake absorbs it like warmth. Above, someone notices the rope has gone slack. They pull. The rope resists, not with force, but with weight, as if attached to a memory rather than a body. It hums faintly, vibrating with a rhythm too slow to be human. Below, the shapes draw closer, their movements economical, reverent. One extends something like a limb, not jointed, not finished, toward your mask. The surface ripples where it touches, dimpling glass, fogging vision with condensation that smells faintly of iron and old rain. You can breathe here, the lake whispers. You already are. The bell rings then, one soft, distant toll that travels not through water but through bone. The silt lifts in a slow spiral, revealing the floor below. Stones arranged in circles, names etched and softened, offerings placed with care. At the center, a depression yawns wider, its edges worn smooth by attention. Your light dies. In the darkness, something enormous shifts, displacing water in a way that is felt rather than seen. The lake tightens one last time, a full-body embrace, precise and tender. Above, the surface remains calm, reflecting stars that have no idea they are being watched. Below, the water opens its mouth, and as the rope slips free and drifts upward unclaimed, the lake settles, glass smooth, deeply patient, already learning the weight of what it has been given, already waiting for the next warmth to realize it is not aloe. Chapter 8. The hospital that never discharged its patients. The hospital still believes you are admitted. It rises in the fog at the edge of town like a thought no one finished having. Brick and glass layered with decades of good intentions and bad endings. The sign above the entrance hangs crooked, letters missing, the remaining ones flickering weakly when the wind shifts. Power was cut years ago. Generators were stripped. Wires were pulled like veins from the walls. And yet, the building hums, low, continuous, a vibration felt more than heard, as if the structure itself has not accepted the diagnosis. Beds remain warm long after the power failed. Step inside and the air greets you with the familiar sterility of abandonment. Bleach gone sour rust, the faint sweetness of something decaying slowly and carefully. The lobby chairs are arranged in tidy rows. Magazines lie stacked, their covers sun-faded but pages uncurled, as though turned regularly by invisible hands. A reception desk waits with its bell intact, polished to a dull shine. Ring it, and the sound does not echo. It sinks. Hallways stretch longer than memory allows. Fluorescent lights flicker on and off without electricity, blinking in tired patterns that resemble Morse code if you are desperate enough to read them. Doors line the walls, each marked with number. Each door closed but unlocked. Nameplates beneath the numbers are scratched clean, leaving only faint outlines where identities once clung. Charts update themselves. At the first nurse's station, a clipboard rests on the counter. Pages flip slowly, stirred by no breeze. Ink creeps across paper in careful script. Letters forming with the deliberation of a steady hand. Condition stable. A pause. Condition declining. Another pause. Condition ongoing. Who's writing that? Someone whispers. The pen lifts, hovers, then writes again. Visitor noted. Beds line the rooms beyond, sheets pulled tight. Corners tucked with professional precision. The mattresses are indented, shaped by bodies that are not there. If you place a hand on one, it is warm, human warm, fresh with the heat of breath and pulse. The warmth lingers even after you pull away, clinging to skin like guilt. Monitors sit dark but attentive. Their screens remain black, yet the sensors hum softly, registering heartbeats that no longer have chests. Occasionally a flatline tone bleeds through the silence, cut short by a corrective beep, as if the machine itself refuses to accept death as final. At night, the call buttons ring. Not all at once. One room at a time. A soft chime from the end of the hall. Then another, closer. The sound is polite, patient, insistent. Lights above the doors flicker on, red bulbs glowing like watchful eyes. Someone needs help. A voice says, reflexive, trained. No, answers another, older voice, weary. Someone needs to stay. The elevators do not work, but their doors open anyway. Inside, mirrors line the walls, reflecting not the car but other rooms. Operating theaters mid-procedure. Recovery wards filled with figures lying perfectly still. Surgeons bend over tables, their faces blurred, their hands moving with practiced certainty. The reflections do not change when you do. They continue their work, uninterrupted. On the third floor, the pediatric wing smells faintly of crayons and antiseptic. Stuffed animals sit at the foot of beds, arranged carefully, their glass eyes dulled by time. Drawings paper the walls, houses with smiling suns, stick families holding hands. Many of the drawings depict the hospital itself, tall and benevolent, with windows lit and doors open wide. In one picture, the hospital has a mouth. "Is my mom coming back?" A small voice asks from behind a curtain. The curtain stirs. "We called her." A nurse answers gently, voice floating from nowhere and everywhere. "She'll be here soon." "How soon?" the child asks. The pause stretches too long. "Soon enough," the nurse says finally. "Lie still." Operating rooms lie deeper within, their doors heavy, their windows clouded. Inside, instruments gleam, laid out in perfect rows. Scalpels hum softly, eager. The tables are clean, but the drains are stained dark, layered with histories that do not rinse away. Charts hang at the foot of each table. Names repeat here. Dates blur. Diagnoses contradict themselves. Terminal, recovering, ongoing. Some charts are thick with updates. Pages added long after handwriting should have stopped. "They never left," someone whispers, scanning the notes. "They just stayed admitted." The hospital remembers everyone. It remembers the last words spoken into pillows, the bargains whispered into folded hands, the prayers that curdled into curses. It remembers the weight of bodies and the exact moment hope shifted into something quieter and more durable, resignation. That is what feeds it. Down the central corridor stands the ward they sealed first, the long-term wing, the place where curtains were never fully opened, the place where patients learned the ceiling tiles by heart. The doors here are heavier, reinforced, their glass panels opaque with age. On each door, a single word has been etched deep enough to scar the metal. Stable. Inside, the beds are occupied. Figures lie beneath sheets drawn up to chins, their forms too still, too careful. Tubes snake from mouths and arms, disappearing into walls that pulse faintly around them. Faces are pale and smooth, eyes closed not in sleep, but in agreement. A nurse moves among them, her shoes making no sound. Her uniform is immaculate. Her badge reads a name that has been crossed out and rewritten too many times. When she turns, her face is kind and utterly exhausted. "They're not ready," she says softly, adjusting a drip. "They never are." "What happens when they are?" someone asks. She smiles, thin and practiced. "We'll know." The call buttons ring louder now, overlapping, insistent. Lights blaze red along the halls, bathing everything in emergency glow. The monitors come alive all at once. Screens flashing vitals that spike and fall in frantic choreography. "Code," a voice announces over the intercom, crackling with age. "Code ongoing. All staff to." The message cuts off, replaced by a steady, rhythmic beat that syncs with the building's hum. The charts bleed faster. Ink seeps through pages, soaking clipboards, dripping onto the floor where it pools and creeps toward your feet. The words blur into one repeated phrase, written over and over in different hands. "Still admitted." From afar into the hall, a gurney rolls forward on its own, wheels squeaking softly. A sheet covers its occupant. As it draws closer, the outline beneath the fabric shifts, rearranging itself, as if the body is remembering how it should be shaped. The nurse looks at you then. "Oh," she says, almost apologetic. "You weren't discharged." Behind her, doors open one by one. Curtains part. Beds creak as weight shifts. Hands emerge from sheets, reaching, not grasping, just signaling. Call buttons ring until the sound becomes a single, overwhelming tone. The hospital leans inward, attentive, alive. Somewhere deep in its core, a final chart begins to fill itself out, pen scratching eagerly across paper. The name at the top is blank, for now. The diagnosis waits, ink poised, listening for your heartbeat to decide how to phrase it. And as the lights flicker and the doors begin to close, the intercom crackles one last time, whispering through every room, every corridor, every memory the building has kept. Visiting hours are over. Chapter 9. The Mountain That Eats the Faithful. The mountain begins long before you reach its base, because doubt does not wait for altitude. It rises from the land like a kneeling god caught mid-prayer, its spine jagged, its slopes scarred by paths worn thin with centuries of feet. Pilgrims have walked those paths since memory learned how to kneel. They came carrying questions heavy as stones, promises stitched into their breath, sins wrapped carefully in cloth. The mountain has never turned anyone away. It simply decides how much of them to keep. From the valley, the summit is always hidden. Clouds cling to it like a blindfold, thick and unmoving even when the sky is clear elsewhere. Bells hang at the first marker, rusted iron tongues inside cracked shells, swaying though no hand touches them. Each pilgrim rings one before climbing. Tradition says the sound lets the mountain know your name. The bells never echo. The wind greets you immediately, threading itself through your clothes, your hair, your bones. It does not howl. It chants. Lo! Repetitive syllables scrape against one another. Prayers worn thin by centuries of mouths. The language is wrong, half-remembered, mispronounced. Syllables missing like teeth. Do you hear it? Someone whispers behind you. Yes. Another answers. It knows the words better than we do. The first stretch is gentle. Stone steps carved long ago, smoothed by knees and palms. Shrines line the path, small alcoves stacked with offerings. Candles burn down to stubs that never melt fully. Coins fused together by old blood. Bones wrapped in linen, labeled with names that repeat too often to be coincidence. Higher up, the path narrows. The air thins. The chanting grows clearer. Pilgrims speak less the higher they climb, not from lack of breath, but because the mountain seems to listen harder when voices rise. Every word feels weighed, measured, found wanting. Some pilgrims begin to mouth prayers without sound, lips moving in silent obedience. Others stop praying entirely. There is a place where the stone changes color. Here, the rock darkens, streaked with veins the color of old bruises. The ground slopes inward, subtly at first, pulling feet closer to the cliff face. Handholds appear where they should not, shaped perfectly for human grip, warm to the touch despite the cold. A pilgrim ahead of you stumbles. I'm fine, he says quickly, voice too loud. The mountain exhales. Pebbles rattle. Snow slips loose above. The man steadies himself, then lowers his voice, whispering apologies to the stone as if it were flesh. His words sink into the rock, absorbed, leaving no echo behind. Wind funnels through a narrow pass, the chant sharpening into something almost legible. Confess, confess, confess. At the halfway shrine, the path splits. One route continues upward, steep and exposed. The other curves inward, vanishing into a dark cleft in the mountain side. An old monk sits between them, wrapped in furs, eyes milked white by age or altitude. His hands are folded as if in prayer, but his lips move constantly, murmuring a rhythm that does not match the wind. Which way? A pilgrim asks. The monk smiles, revealing gums worn smooth. The way you believe, he says, and the way you deserve. Are they different? Another whispers. The monk's smile widens. They always are. Some pilgrims choose the open path, trusting sky and effort. Others duck into the mountain's mouth, seeking shelter, shortcuts, revelation. The mountain remembers both. Inside, the stone sweats. The passage is narrow, forcing bodies close to the walls. The rock pulses faintly, contracting and relaxing like a slow breath. Carvings line the tunnel. Figures kneeling, reaching upward, mouths open in praise or scream. Their faces are detailed, individualized, frozen in moments of surrender. A handprint appears beside yours as you steady yourself. It is fresh. Don't stop, someone whispers urgently. It likes it when you stop. Further in, the tunnel widens into a chamber lit by no visible source. The ceiling arches high, lost in darkness. In the center stands an altar carved directly from a mountain, slick and darkened by offerings. Scraps of cloth cling to it. Hair, teeth, fingers arranged carefully, reverently. Names are carved into stone around the altar. Some are crossed out. Some are only partially finished. A woman kneels there, forehead pressed to the rock. Her lips move soundlessly, tears cutting clean lines through the dust on her face. "What did you give?" Someone asked her gently. She looks up, eyes hollow but peaceful. "Everything it asked for," she says, "and it's still hungry." Outside, the open path grows cruel. The wind becomes violent, slamming bodies sideways, tearing prayers from mouths and hurling them into the abyss. The chanting fractures, overlapping voices piling atop one another, monks, pilgrims, children, all reciting different versions of the same plea. Forgive us, take us, answer us. Snow begins to fall upward, drawn toward the summit like ash to a wound. Footprints vanish moments after being made, erased by the mountain's patience. One pilgrim collapses to his knees. "I can't go on," he gasps. "I believe. I swear I believe." The mountain shudders. A fissure opens beneath him, just wide enough. Stone folds inward with wet finality. His scream is brief, cut short as the mountain closes, sealing the offering inside. The chanting grows stronger. Near the summit, the air tastes of iron and incense. The clouds thin, revealing a wide, flat plateau. At its center stands nothing. No shrine, no statue, no sign of divine reward. Just bare stone, scarred and darkened by countless knees. This is where answers are supposed to come. Pilgrims kneel. Some wait for visions, others for voices. Some simply wait to be allowed back down. The mountain waits too. A crack splits the plateau, hairline at first, then widening. From it rises warmth, breath thick with the smell of blood, an old prayer. Hands emerge, stone-skinned, human-shaped, gripping the edges as something within shifts, rearranging itself to stand. The wind falls silent. The chanting stops. A voice speaks, not aloud, but directly into the bones. "Faith is weight," it says, "and you have climbed far. What do you want?" Someone whispers, tears freezing on their lashes. The mountain does not answer with words. It answers with movement. Stone tilts. The plateau slopes inward. Pilgrims slide toward the crack, scrambling, nails breaking against rock that offers no grip now. Those who pray louder slide faster. Those who curse cling longer. Below, the mountain opens wider. Inside its depths, you glimpse faces embedded in stone, mouths open in eternal devotion. You see bells without ropes, still ringing. You see the monk, younger now, eyes clear, smiling as he is drawn inward, hands still folded. The mountain accepts what is given. As you are dragged toward the opening, the wind returns, whispering a final, broken prayer around your ears, a prayer you recognize as your own, spoken in a voice that is not yet dead. And as the stone closes again, sealing the summit smooth and untouched, a new path begins to form at the base of the mountain, worn thin by the footsteps of the next faithful who will climb, never knowing which names have just been carved into the rock beneath their feet. Chapter 10. The place that followed you home. It followed you not with footsteps, but with patience. You first notice in the quiet moments, those thin slivers of time when the world lowers its guard, the instant before sleep, the pause after switching off the light, the breath held while waiting for something unnamed to pass. The place did not announce itself. It simply arrived, settling into the corners of your life as if it had always been there, and you were only just remembering. You had visited it once. That was all it ever needed. No map marked it. No sign warned you away. It existed as a gap, a wrongness between destinations, a silence between stories. You stepped into it, thinking you would step out unchanged. Everyone does. The place looked ordinary at first. A room, a path, a threshold no different from 1,000 others. Its walls held no symbols, its air no stench of decay. Only a feeling, faint but persistent, like being watched by something too polite to stare. "Don't linger," someone had whispered then. You never saw their face. It learns faster when you linger. You left. You were certain of that. You remember the way back, the sound of your own footsteps returning to normal streets, familiar doors. known skies. You remember the relief of distance, the certainty that danger belongs to places, not people. You were wrong. It followed you in reflections first. Mirrors held your face a second too long. Windows at night showed shapes behind you that vanished when you turned. Your own eyes in polished metal or dark glass sometimes looked back with a delay, as if they were waiting for permission to blink. Did you see that? You asked once quietly, to no one. The room answered with silence that felt rehearsed. Dreams came next, not nightmares. The place was subtler than that. It offered dreams of return. Familiar hallways extended just a little farther than they should. Doors appeared where walls had been. You would walk them without fear, guided by a sense of inevitability deeper than choice. In these dreams, the place whispered, not words at first, sensations, the warmth of recognition, the comfort of being expected. You came back, it murmured eventually, in a voice stitched together from echoes. We knew you would. I didn't mean to, you whispered in the dream, though you did not remember deciding to speak. Meaning is for entrances, the place replied, not for exits. You woke with the taste of dust and old air in your mouth. At home, objects began to shift, not enough to prove anything. Chairs angled slightly toward doorways. Hallways felt longer at night. The sound of your own breathing sometimes echoed back, half a beat at a time. You told yourself this was exhaustion, memory, the residue of fear clinging where it wasn't wanted. But the place is patient. It does not rush what is already inevitable. It learned your routines, the hours you were most tired, the rooms you avoided at night, the way you always checked behind the shower curtain, even though you laughed at yourself for it. One evening, as you turned off the lights, you heard it clearly for the first time. Not loud, not close, right behind your thoughts. You brought us with you, it whispered, almost tender. You opened the door the right way. I closed it. You said aloud, heart pounding. The darkness seemed to lean closer. No, it corrected gently. You crossed it. You began to notice places within your home that felt thinner, corners where sound dulled, door frames that seemed deeper on the inside than the outside, a closet that smelled faintly of stone and rain no matter how often you cleaned it. You avoided those places. The place noticed. Why are you afraid? It asked one night, your own voice borrowing its tone in the mirror. You survived us. Did I? You whispered. The reflection smiled a moment before you did. Memories began to fray. Small things at first. How long you had lived here, where you placed certain objects. Then larger things. Faces of people you loved growing indistinct at the edges, as if the place were sanding them down to fit somewhere else. You found dirt beneath your fingernails in the morning. Cold, damp soil that smelled of somewhere far away and deeply familiar. When you washed it away, the drain made a sound like distant breathing. You tried to leave, to travel, to put miles between yourself and whatever had attached itself to you. Everywhere you went, the place was already waiting. Hotel rooms felt pre-lived in. Airplanes hummed with the same low chant you had heard in other cursed locations. Even crowds could not drown it out, especially crowds. So many doors, the place whispered as you walked among strangers. So many of you carry us without knowing. You stopped sleeping, or rather, you slept without rest. Each dream brought you close to the place's center, a space you had never seen, but always recognized. A room made of thresholds, a home built from exits that never quite finished closing. In the dream, you stood before a door you did not remember opening. On the other side, something waited. Come inside, it whispered, using the voices of every place you had ever feared. You've been carrying us for so long. Let us carry you. I don't want to, you said, though your hand was already on the handle. That's what leaving feels like, the place replied. It only hurts the first time. You woke standing in your hallway, barefoot, the front door wide open. Night air spilled in, heavy and expectant. For a moment, you couldn't remember where you lived, or why it mattered. The walls breathed, photographs on the walls blurred, faces smoothing into strangers. Your name sounded wrong in your mouth when you tried to say it. Stay, the place whispered from every darkened room at once. You belong to us now. You always did. You backed away, heart hammering, until your shoulders touched a wall that felt softer than it should. It flexed slightly under your weight, warm, alive. Behind you, something shifted, adjusting itself to your shape. In the dim light, you saw the truth at last. The place had never followed you home. It had been unfolding inside you since the moment you left it. Room by room, memory by memory, building itself from your fears, your habits, your quiet moments of inattention. You were not haunted. You were inhabited. As the lights flicker out one by one, the last thing you saw was a door forming in the center of the room, its hinges already screaming softly in recognition, opening inward, waiting to see who would step through next.